hardware. I was about to say I'm not that good at hardware. Okay. Whoa, sounds better. The sound of God. Okay. So, so thanks everybody for showing up. Roy and I think it was like November-ish, we were sitting at the Indiegogo office, and it was basically like a bromance. Like, yo, dude, I love hardware. No, man, I love hardware. I love what you're doing with your new fund. Oh, I love what you're doing with your company. Yeah, we should do something together. And at the end of the year, we're just trying to figure it out. Next thing you knew, it was the turn of the new year. And I just want to give you a sense of what's happened since even New Year's at Indiegogo. So there was a Consumer Electronics Show in January in Vegas. And just a year prior, we only had a few campaigns representing just about $2 million. And just 2 months ago, we were there with over 40 companies represented that had raised money on Indiegogo, and over $15 million. So it's like pretty exciting. And then just several weeks later, there was CES, and it was South by, and I don't know how much of you would care about Shaquille O'Neal, but there it was, Shaquille O'Neal, all 7'1" of him, talking about his new video game. But he's on an Irby, which is this new electronic scooter. And that's cool, but little did Roy and I know that when we were talking about coming up with this idea for a talk, that 4 months prior, that a little bit later, there would be a $3 billion company, Marvell, that would come out just before South by to actually be using Indiegogo to be prototyping and looking for market validation for their new product, which is kind of like Legos for the Internet of Things, where you can piece it all together and teach people how things are moving forward with connected devices, which I think all of that context is super cool. The smart people will be on stage in about 18 minutes. There'll be a panel with lots of good people. Most of them are right here. I'm just going to set it up with a little bit of inspiration just from where we came from in the early 1900s to how we got here. It's true, it'll only take about 9 minutes. So we just call it Funding Reinvented. And if you think about it, let's see if this works. All right. It's always been historically that it was quite simple. You wanted money, you go to get money, and you got a binary reaction back, which is a yes or a no. So you went to the banker, and they gave you money, or they did not give you money. You went to the VC, they gave you money, or they did not give you money. You went to the government organization, they gave you money, or they did not give you money. I mean, it's a fairly straightforward concept. Go, ask, get a response, which is all fine and good, but it's actually, as you see time go by, that concept has evolved. See, this is the old way of thinking about money, which is you're in a crowd, waiting one at a time, in line, to go ask a gatekeeper, which is usually a human being, or a few human beings, whether or not they believe that you deserve money. So this is actually a picture from, like I promised, the early 1900s. This is obviously the run on the banks for money, when people thought that there wasn't going to be enough money. But it's actually just very telling what the crowd looked like back then, one at a time, in line, to try to get a binary response. But see, it's different when the crowd doesn't have to be in line. The crowd can become an amorphous object where they can surround a concept however they want. They can be making decisions on their own without an individual gatekeeper deciding whether or not you should have that money. As soon as you no longer have that binary decision process of yes, no, a lot more information can start flowing around this actual action, which I think is very interesting. See, you go now from idea to money, which was before very linear and back and forth, to now you have all these things coming around. What is happening in that around? And many of you are actually customers. Many of you have used Indiegogo, have thought about crowdfunding, have funded things. So you've all participated in this, which is, this is actually the benefits that you're getting in this non-linear process, right? So yes, the money is a great result. But really what matters when Canoma Create is being created by Marvell, they're looking for market validation. Many of you are looking to be able to get extra promotion. You don't want to be on your own island starting from scratch. You're hoping to be able to take advantage that there's already been all this work that's been out there, and you want as much exposure as possible. See, not all of us know when we jump off a cliff whether or not our hardware product is going to be relevant for young girls or old women, young boys or old men. So it's very good to stay nimble with your marketing and not have to invest lots of money into actual publishing out into the real world. You can start practicing on Indiegogo, and you get all of this information coming back. To me, the most powerful thing when you move from a world of money here, idea here, and yes or no, but instead you actually engage the crowd, is you move from a world of transaction to a world of relationship. And that's really the massive, massive shift. So you went back in the 1900s when the person gave you the money or not, you were literally a transaction to them. Should you get this money or should you not? But now everybody that's reviewing your campaign, looking at your idea, not only will they give you feedback, maybe through comments, by finding the perk that they desire at what level they desire, what color do they want that product in, do they want it internationally, from what country, from what zip code, from what state, but they're also now going to be part of your feedback loop, so you can count on them all the way into the future. So you now created a relationship. It's probably one of the most valuable things. The concept of change and iteration is not new, and trying to use the information from the crowd. Going back even earlier than the 1900s, you have Levi Strauss, who actually at the time was using canvas to be able to create more covered wagons. And people were trying to figure out what they should do about clothing. And Levi Strauss saw that some people were starting to use canvas as actually part of their clothing. The concept here is, again, it's around iteration based on feedback from the market. This wasn't a binary thing where he just put something out and people either accepted or didn't. It was something where there was constant listening, and he was already in the late 1800s creating a relationship with people that even back then you can't even consider customers. Rather, he was already taking advantage of the feedback loop. Just think about now how things change when you get to the world of the Panono, which just late last year, and I think earlier this year actually, just finished their raise of $1.25 million to have the first 360-degree camera, 36 different cameras all in rotation. I mean, super cool in terms of from Germany, having funding, I'm not sure from how many countries, somebody over here might know, but from dozens of different countries from around the world. I mean, this isn't some like simple hardware product either. This is amazing algorithms and all kinds of connecting between hardware and software, where you can take the device anywhere you want and be able to later, through software, see the experience of all 360 degrees of all the camera photos being taken, as if it was one photo. Pretty amazing stuff. Very similar, they were getting the feedback, just like Levi Strauss was from before. Or you have Misfit Shine, right here from the Valley. I mean, they were able to have Sonny, who's an incredible entrepreneur, and even one of their founders, who was the former CEO of Apple. Together, they were able to come up with an amazing new device, an activity tracker. But not only was it functionally very good, but design-wise, people have been saying it's as good as it gets. I really had a warm feeling in my heart when I was in New York, and you don't have to be in New York to have this, but I was in New York, and I picked up the New York Times, and there's actually a full-page ad of the Misfit Shine, in the New York Times. And I was like, wow, how far Misfit Shine has come. And not only were they able to raise, $850,000 from thousands of folks, but then following that, again, the validation play, they were able to get, I believe, nearly $15 million of VC money, VC funding within the following year after the raise. Another really cool example. So it's not just for, let's call it, little campaigns. The next one is you have Scan and Do Scout, and some of you have already even said what it is. I wish I had an example with me of the prototype, but literally it's a doctor in your pocket. So I don't know how many, I bet you since it's San Francisco, many of you will be, but how many of you are Star Trek fans? But in Star Trek, there used to be the character Captain Kirk, right? And another one, Bones. And Bones was considered the doctor. So Bones would say, oh, Captain Kirk, don't go yet. I think you're not healthy. And Captain Kirk would be like, no, I'm fine. And Bones would be like, no, wait 1 second. And he'd pull a little device out of his pocket and go, and he would scan him, and he'd be like, oh, you're good. I mean, it's kind of nutty, right? This is like the 70s when this was happening. And for the first time, somebody on Indiegogo was like, we're going to bring this to reality into the real world. I mean, talk about people thinking it was fraud, right? But right away they started funding it, and the cool thing was not that it raised a ton of money, because they tried to raise $100,000 and they were able to raise, 1.6 something. But the cool thing was that they had the FDA was really concerned whether or not this would ever work, and whether or not you ever want people to be tracking their medical vitals through a cell phone device, etc. I mean, it promises to do blood pressure, EKG, all kinds of temperature, all kinds of amazing things. And what they did was they took all of the funders, remember going from transaction to relationship, and they used the funders as the FDA source for feedback. So when the FDA was trying to find out whether or not this is working or not working, why do they fund, what do they think, etc., they went to the funders to try to get an understanding as to why they're thinking this and what they expect, all this good stuff. I mean, it doesn't get any better in terms of that feedback loop. Not only are they giving you the $100, the $600, but then they're becoming the people who are validating your idea to the government organization to say, yes, we should push this through. So a little bit more contextual information again. So this is the origin of the telephone. So in the early days of the telephone, you can see it was fairly flatline, and I believe it's over a 40-year time frame. So if you look at the growth curve over a 40-year time frame until 1920, so we all know what happens with the telephone. It rapidly accelerates after 1920, much further, to the point where eventually people no longer talk about the telephone because it's a useless concept. It just becomes a platform, a utility that other things are then built on top of. No one cares about using a telephone per se. What they care about is communicating with their friend, their girlfriend, their mom. But see, in the early days of the telephone got in the way. It's like, do you have a telephone? Does your telephone work? As you advance forward, no one even talks about it because it becomes part of the way things work. It becomes really about the relationships on top. Look at the curve there over 40 years. This is the curve of Indiegogo in 6 years. It's very flatline at first as well. We dealt with the market crash of 2008, 2009. And I would go so far as to say is we are in 1920 of crowdfunding. What I mean is we are just starting where we are going. Because right now we still actually talk about, does crowdfunding work? Like, does the telephone work? Do you use crowdfunding? Do you have a phone? It's not about that. See, several years from now, it will become so embedded into how funding happens, we will not talk about it anymore. We will talk about how incredible the companies are that come out, the relationships that are created, the fact that the FDA approved something because of this thing that they used, it doesn't matter, called crowdfunding, right? So just think about the acceleration of how things can move forward. With that, it's all about the feedback loops. Because of the internet is accelerated, the Internet of Things, you have convergence of technology, you have speed, all these things are moving faster. The feedback loops are getting tighter and faster with more accurate, smaller bits of information that is more actionable each moment. So it's not about broad, I'm not sure, I think I'm hearing a lot of signal to noise. It's all becoming tighter, more compressed, faster, which is why we're able to see companies evolve much quicker to become mature companies. And I think it's a very, very exciting time. Hardware is starting to see more benefit than ever of that. That only has started in the last several years. Obviously, you have investments by Google into Nest and things like that. In my opinion, it's not because they think just Nest, one hardware product is good. I think Google is moving into the Internet of Things and trying to figure out all of that data. We all here can do the same thing with each one of our hardware devices and thoughts. And we're all about our customers. So this is just a tile of actual customers and smiley faces and great campaigns. And with that, that's the end of my several minutes from 1800s or 1900s to today. I'm @Gogo Slava or Slava at Indiegogo. I try pretty hard to answer all my emails, usually within 24 hours. Not always perfect at that. And yeah, soon we'll have the smart people to take the panel.